Welcome to the 700 Club, and thanks so much for joining with us. Well, President-elect Trump, he's repeated his warning to Hamas: return the hostages by Inauguration Day or pay a heavy price.
In a press conference yesterday, Trump also discussed the situation in Syria and the current state of the Middle East. Chris Mitchell reports from Jerusalem.
During his press conference, President-elect Trump weighed in on the sudden takeover of Syria by rebel forces. He also suggested Turkish leader Recep Erdogan was deeply involved and sees Syria as part of his plan to reconstruct a Turkish empire.
Turkey's the one behind it. He's a very smart guy. They've wanted it for thousands of years, and he got it. And those people that went in are controlled by Turkey. And that's okay. It's another way to fight.
Trump's comments come as U.S. officials fear Turkish-backed forces are massing on the border of northeast Syria for an imminent invasion. The territory is controlled by Kurdish forces and an independent and democratic government that was an ally with the U.S. in the war against ISIS. In a letter to Trump, leaders warned of catastrophic consequences if they were invaded and asked Trump to press Erdogan to not send troops across the border. As to Israel's war with Iran's proxies, Trump was bullish on his talk with Netanyahu.
The real conversations will start on the 20th, but we had a really good conversation, and I think we're going to be in a good place in the Middle East.
Trump said getting the hostages free is a priority.
As you know, I gave warning that if these hostages aren't back home by that date, all hell's going to break out, and very strong.
The release of the hostages is one of the toughest issues since October 7th. Now that Hamas realizes Hezbollah and Iran are not coming to its rescue, the group may be ready to finally bargain with Israel. Israel's defense minister told the Knesset Monday that a deal is the nearest it's been since the last agreement.
We all estimate that an opportunity is being created following Hamas's need to become more flexible, and I really hope we can advance to a practical stage in this process.
According to the Washington Post, Hamas is no longer insisting the war in Gaza completely end, and all Israeli troops depart as a precondition for releasing hostages. Meanwhile, a new study reports Hamas has vastly inflated the number of Gazans killed in the 14-month war. The Hamas-run Ministry of Health in Gaza claims 45,000 dead, but the Henry Jackson Society's report disputes that number. It concludes Hamas's reporting has a number of distortions. Men listed as women to inflate female fatalities. Adults registered as children to inflate child fatalities, including 5,000 natural deaths, as well as people killed by Hamas in the death totals, including deaths before the war began, and no mention of combatant deaths, as many as 17,000. Military historian John Spencer said during its war with Hamas, Israel has done more to mitigate civilian deaths than any other military in history. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Well, we've been telling you for over a year now that the Hamas ministry, the Gaza Ministry of Health, is a propaganda arm of Hamas. It is a total invention of Hamas. Everyone involved in that is a Hamas fighter. So you cannot believe these numbers. But again and again and again, I'm hearing it and hearing these inflated numbers repeated, whether in Europe or in the United States. And it goes along with this whole argument that somehow or other Israel is involved in a genocide in Gaza. Well, there's no genocide at all. Israel is not trying to wipe out every man, woman, and child in Gaza. That's what a genocide is. Who is trying to wage a genocide? Well, it's Hamas, and it's right in their charter, where they call for a Palestinian state throughout Israel. And in that Palestinian state, there should be no Jew. They are the ones calling for the genocide. Israel is doing its best to protect civilian lives. But in that, Hamas is doing its best to put civilians at risk, and that's why they're putting their headquarters in hospitals and schools and UN buildings. That's why they're using civilians as shields, and that's why they're even using the hostages as shields. I just applaud the incoming president. We need to take a stand here. There are Americans who are hostages in these tunnels in Gaza. We have to set them free. If it were any other party in charge right now, the mainstream media would have a incredible drumbeat every single day. Go back to the Bush administration and the war in Iraq, where every single newscast, every single night, led with the death toll of American soldiers in Iraq. And it was all a propaganda effort to change administrations to another party. Let's call it for what it is, and let's please stand for truth. This misinformation coming out of Gaza should have never been repeated. In other news, investigators are looking for answers after a 15-year-old girl opened fire inside her Christian school in Wisconsin. I don't understand the level of violence in our schools today. It just seems to be again and again and again. That which restrains seems to be going away in our own culture. John Jessup has that story and more from our CBN News Bureau in Washington. John?
In Gordon, a student and teacher died in the attack, and 2 others are in critical condition as of this morning. Madison's Abundant Life Christian School has 420 students from pre-kindergarten to 12th grade. Officials say the suspect, identified as 15-year-old student Natalie Ruppnow, brought a handgun and started shooting in a study hall. The 911 call came in just before 11 a.m. Monday from a second grader.
Don't let that soak in for a minute. A second grade student called 911 at 10:57 a.m. to report a shooting at school.
Officers entered the school within 4 minutes, finding 2 victims dead and 6 injured. Investigators say the suspect took her own life. The attack happening just days before Christmas break begins.
I heard gunshots and screaming, and it was all really scary, and I was terrified. So were my friends.
The community gathered in a prayer service last night as police searched the alleged shooter's home and social media accounts. The suspect's parents are cooperating with the investigation. Well, now to the latest on drone sightings in the Northeast, with the White House releasing new information. National Security Communications Advisor John Kirby says an analysis of the reports reveals the sightings are a combination of lawful drones used by companies, hobbyists, and law enforcement, as well as manned fixed-wing aircraft and helicopters, even stars. The announcement comes amid widespread criticism of the government's response to the multiple drone sightings, including from President-elect Donald Trump.
They know where it came from and where it went, and for some reason they don't want to comment. And I think they'd be better off saying what it is.
4 federal agencies also declared there's no evidence of a threat to national security or public safety. The FBI is warning people not to try to shoot down any suspected drones. Well, a free speech case in Virginia challenges a realtor's right to post Bible verses on his Facebook page. The Virginia Association of Realtors ruled Wilson Faber committed a breach of ethics because his post violated a prohibition on, quote, certain religious expressions. Faber told CBN's Wendy Griffith he did nothing wrong and is expected to appeal.
This started to come to light last year when 70-year-old Wilson Faber, a realtor and pastor, decided to run for Staunton City Council. Long before his decision to run, Faber reposted a scripture from Reverend Franklin Graham on his Facebook page in 2015. It stated that homosexual sex is a sin based on Leviticus 18:22. Then last year, 2 Staunton realtors, including an openly gay man, filed a complaint with the Virginia Association of Realtors accusing Faber of hate speech.
Why do you think this is all coming out now in 2024?
Because the National Association of Realtors is woke. The leadership of the National Association of Realtors has made it very clear about their involvement and endorsing and approving of the LGBTQ community. And just recently, just a few weeks ago, actually, in Charlottesville, Virginia, the National Association of Realtors provided funding for a drag queen show.
The Charlottesville Area Association of Realtors hosted the November drag show in the name of a fair housing symposium, reportedly funded in part by the National Association of Realtors Fair Housing Grant. We contacted the NAR for comment, and no one has responded to our request.
So let me get this straight. So they can use realtor funds for drag queen shows, but he can't post a biblical scripture on Facebook to support traditional marriage.
That's the position that's being suggested.
Michael Sylvester with Founding Freedoms Law Center represents Faber and tells CBN News that while this is a violation of free speech, there's a catch.
So it all changed in 2020 when the National Association of Realtors adopted a rule that prohibits anybody from speaking what they deem hate speech against certain protected classes, such as sexual orientation or gender identity. But what's incredible here is the post that Wilson made was in 2015, 5 years before that rule even existed. He simply was presenting his religious views about marriage. That should not qualify for a hate speech charge.
For now, Faber can keep his real estate license while they pursue a possible appeal. He says this guilty ruling, however, sets a bad precedent and will likely affect other organizations, not just realtors.
Christians don't have rights. And this is just totally wrong. And the National Association of Realtors, being the largest trade organization in America, they have set a precedent by adopting this policy. If I'm guilty because I post my religious beliefs in a meme or a scripture on my Facebook or social media accounts, if that's guilty of hate speech, there are millions and millions of Christians that agree with my position, and we don't have a voice.
If the guilty verdict stands, Faber could face fines as high as $15,000 and possibly lose his license, which would likely end his real estate career. Wendy Griffith, CBN News.
Thank you, Wendy. Gordon, back to you.
Well, I hope this story gets you outraged, because I certainly am. There's a new thing coming, and it's called social media archaeology. Here you have a post. It's 9 years ago, before the rule was put in by the realtors, and they're taking a current rule and applying it to something that he did on his own Facebook page. So here you have a pastor. He's also a politician. He's also a realtor. At what point in time does the realtor have the association have the power to invade his private accounts, his political accounts, his political speech? Does their power really extend that far? We're into this gray area in American culture right now. And the gray area is the Bill of Rights applies to the government. The government can't restrict speech and can't restrict assembly, can't restrict the press. The government has to guarantee the free exercise of religion in the culture. So the government needs to intervene when these private organizations have this ideology that they're trying to enforce and limit speech. America is all about freedom of conscience. It's all about freedom of speech. We all get to believe what we want to believe. And in that competition of free ideas, the best ideas always emerge. We have to stand for that. If we allow hate speech to be this sort of tag that limits free speech, we've lost a fundamental right.